I've not had this experience in the NFL, and I've never seen anybody have this experience that Lyle's had, and Loita as well. She said, I hope I can do this. She said, my boy's been hit on the end of the nose hard. I wouldn't want to be in his way, and I'd advise nobody else to get in his way. He's going to show them. He's going to show them what this is about.
I know what I stand for. I know the person that I am. I know what I believe in. And I know that if, words of a guy like Ray Lewis, if they that bold to put my reputation on the line, I'm not just that bold to fight for it. I couldn't be in a greater situation. I couldn't be in a greater place. And, I just want to thank Mr. Jones, his family, this organization, and everybody that's standing behind me, because I guarantee you this. I'm going to give this organization everything that I have and more. This is going to be the best offensive line in NFL history. Mark my words.
Wow, powerful words there. The signing comes on the heels of the Cowboys drafting Randy Gregory, who was a top 10 talent but failed a drug test at the Combine. Dallas now has Collins, Gregory, and Greg Hardy, totally different category. But let's discuss the signings. Will the reward be worth the risk with these recent signings? Skip, you first.
That is a great question, Kerry Champion. Stephen A. Smith, maybe it's the Cowboy fan speaking in me now, but I'm going to give a big yes to that question. I think this whole group will be ultimately worth the risk. And I want to point out, Stephen A., do you realize that Jerry Jones just pulled this off? He went into this past draft with one first-round pick way down at number 27, and he wound up landing a top 10 potential pick in Randy Gregory, and he got him all the way down at the bottom of the second round at number 60, and he just signed a possible top 20 pick in Lyle Collins as a street free agent. And, of course, he used that number 27 pick on a high-character, freakish athlete in Byron Jones. So Jerry Jones now has 3 first-round picks, quote-unquote, for bargain basement money. Could be 3 big steals that he got in this draft. And, frankly, even though the biggest risk is probably the former Pro Bowl pass rusher, Greg Hardy, given his domestic violence past and the fact that he already had some sort of altercation with one of his new teammates. But still, that's a very Cowboy-friendly contract that he signed with the Dallas Cowboys just because he, like Lyle Collins, wanted to be a Cowboy. And I'll be the first to admit, Des Bryant can be emotionally volatile, and he's got contract issues going on, so maybe that's ticking also. I'm not sure I envy Jason Garrett going into this volatile mix with all these new players next year. But Lyle Collins could be the biggest steal of all. Now, look, he still has not been completely cleared by the police in this investigation, even though he was never referred to as a suspect. And he did pass a lie detector test, and he did pass a paternity test that showed he was not the father of this child. So I don't know what's going on in the background of this, but again, this is a very good football player, and you saw the emotion that we saw in the clip that we just showed. He is going to be on a mission. He is joining a very good, a possibly great offensive line, and he's a possibly very good offensive lineman. So his statement, this is going to be the greatest line in history, I don't think that's far-fetched. I think it's got possibilities. And because he is going to be so driven, because he felt so wrong by what just happened, I'm good. I'm hopeful here. And my final point to you, Stephen A., and I think you missed this because you weren't on the back end of the show. We had Herman Edwards on Tuesday. Yeah. And I was not aware of this. He is mentoring Randy Gregory. And that did my heart good because I told you I wasn't sure Randy Gregory was going to be worth the risk. But with Herman in the mix, I believe in Herman Edwards, especially in this capacity, and this will be great for this young man and great for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm good to go.
You said?
I'm happy.
Talking about a Super Bowl?
It's going to help.
All right.
Yeah.
Skip Bayless, I'm going to say something to you, and I'm dead serious. I'm not playing around. I will have my fun. I will play around. But in all seriousness, I will not ridicule the Dallas Cowboys anymore. I'm dead serious about that. My whole mentality has changed on a different level to see Jerry Jones like that. And here's why. Let's consider what transpired here. This kid Collins had the potential to be a top 10 or top 15 pick in the NFL draft because of an ex-girlfriend that he was no longer involved with, was murdered. And ultimately, she was pregnant and the child eventually died as well. God rest their souls. This individual, who police specifically said was not a suspect, still had to fly back to Louisiana to address this matter. And because of it, it cost him about $8 million. $8 million. Because someone was murdered who you once was involved with, and you're not a suspect, but because you have to go answer questions to help the police with their investigation, it cost you $8 million and raised the proverbial eyebrow as to whether or not you did have something to do with it in the minds of Joe and Susie Public. This kid, as far as I'm concerned, was royally screwed over. Not just in the game of football, but in the game of life. Because thank God he had football to lean on. Because if he was just somebody out here looking for a job and his name had been associated with such things, nobody would have touched him. He would not have had this opportunity. So you have that going on. You have the NFL and, obviously in their willingness because of their recent history, the actions and transgressions of a violent nature by a bevy of individuals associated with the NFL has tainted the league so much they're petrified and taking chances. And more importantly, doing what we're supposed to be willing to do in America. And that's giving somebody the benefit of the doubt and treating them as if they're innocent until proven guilty. Because of the world we're living in, because of the advent of social media, because of all the things that have transpired, you are now guilty until proven innocent. And it's one thing when it involves the Deflategate or something else, but it's another thing entirely when it involves somebody's livelihood, when it involves this man being, associated with a murder investigation. So what does Jerry Jones do? Jerry Jones steps in there. He looks this young man in the face. He talks to him. He talks to his mother. And even though he's getting a bargain because it's a 3-year, $1.65 million fully guaranteed deal, which is pennies compared to, what most people, what a lot of guys in the NFL are getting, and obviously very small compared to what Collins could have gotten himself had he not been associated with this. The bottom line is that Jerry Jones extended a hand and brought him on the Dallas Cowboys and didn't just sign him, but had the decency to have that press conference, to let the world know this young man was in front of my face, his mama was in front of my face, and I believe him, and I believe them, and you all should believe him, and you all should be alarmed at the fact that this young man has been associated with such a thing. He could be totally innocent, and yet he was a part of a double murder investigation where ultimately he had to give some information to the police, and just because he had to do that, teams wouldn't touch him. It's an egregious occurrence that took place. And this man's life could have been damaged because of it. And because Jerry Jones didn't just do him a favor by signing him, Skip. It was having that press conference and coming across the way that he did to not only bring attention to his belief in this man, but how all of us should be alarmed at how easy it was to denigrate him. I applaud Jerry Jones for that. And I don't think I could ever root against him again, to be quite honest with you. It really touched me.
I appreciate your sentiments on that. I was also touched watching Jerry because I know Jerry very well. He does relate because he came from nothing. He's had his off-the-field issues occasionally, and I'm not sure anybody in sports has been more criticized, more condemned by the national media than Jerry Jones has. So he's relating to the circumstance. I think it's important, Stephen A., just for the record, the young man still hasn't been completely released from the investigation, just for the record. But I hear everything you just said. I'm just trying to be completely fair here. But
I understand. Yeah. I get that. The only reason I speak in such definitive terms is because they said he's not a suspect.
No,
They've repeatedly said he's not a suspect.
Yep.
And the question that nobody has asked, and I know, obviously a murder investigation takes precedent, but I guess the question that I would ask is that if the young man is not a suspect, couldn't this have waited until after the draft to actually question him?
I asked that same question.
I mean, I'm like, my goodness, because you're a young black man. Yep. You didn't grow up in affluence. Yep. Okay, you have to work your way up. It couldn't have waited until after Thursday.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You cost a young man $8 million. $8 million.
Yeah, but a lot of times police and DAs just don't care about the NFL. They just
listen. Wait a minute.
We'll go the other way.
Actually, that's not entirely true. DAs have a tendency, I'm not saying they don't do their jobs, but let's not act like they're not political here. Let's not act like they don't maneuver things for publicity purposes, that timing and all of this stuff. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not, you didn't have to talk to the man before the draft. This man had to fly there. What was it, the Monday or the Tuesday before the draft?
Yeah.
It couldn't have been Friday or Saturday?
You're right.
Come on, man.
I agree.
Come on, man.
You make a very solid point.
Come on.
Okay, back to just the football context.
Sure.
Is there still some high risk going on in totality here with all these players? Because you know what happens when you have lower character football players. I'm not saying Lyle's in that group.
He's not in the group of them. Yeah, sure.
But what I'm saying is when you lose 2 in a row, maybe 3 in a row, that locker room can explode a lot faster when you have lower character.
Well,
so that's my fear here. That's my concern.
But there are character issues everywhere and in every sport. So let's make sure that we don't sit there and pigeonhole individuals or label individuals in one sport. There isn't a sport alive, a team sport alive, where that is not a concern for coaches and management.
Okay.
Everybody has to deal with the same thing, regardless of the sport, regardless of the ethnicity, pervading the sport, etc. Everybody has to deal with it.
Okay. Last quick point.
Sure.
Now I'm going to bring out the Cowboy hate in you again. I fear.
I don't think he has it.
I know. Today you don't. I'm impressed. But this is, again, the fan in me talking. Cowboy mystique is alive and well because now we've seen 3 players in a row, Randy Gregory, saying, I just wanted to be a Dallas Cowboy. These guys could have, they wanted to be a Cowboy. Lyle wanted, now he grew up in Baton Rouge, which is still in kind of cowboy country in Louisiana, but he wanted to be a Dallas Cowboy, and Greg Hardy said, I really wanted to play for the Dallas Cowboys. So Jerry has that still operating, even though you have rightfully pointed out they've got a long, bad record playoff-wise going back, 17 years. But last year, I think they started to come back to the living.
They came around. Yep. They came around. They look good.
I would say on a day like today, I totally understand why they feel that
way. And I'd advise nobody else to get in his way. He's going to show them. He's going to show them what this is about.
I know what I stand for. I know the person that I am. I know what I believe in. And I know that if, words of a guy like Ray Lewis, if they that bold to put my reputation on the line, I'm not just that bold to stand to fight for it.
The signing comes on the heels of the Cowboys drafting Randy Gregory, who was a top 10 talent, but failed a drug test at the Combine. Dallas now has Collins, Gregory, and Greg Hardy, totally different category. But let's discuss the signings. Will the reward be worth the risk with these recent signings? Skip, you first.
That is a great question, Kerry Champion. Stephen A. Smith, maybe it's the Cowboy fan speaking in me now, but I'm going to give a big yes.
I've not had this experience in the NFL, and I've never seen anybody have this experience that Lyle's had, and Loita as well. She said, I hope I can do this. She said, my boy's been hit on the end of the nose hard. I wouldn't want to be in his way.
To that question, I think this whole group will be ultimately worth the risk. And I want to point out, Stephen A., do you realize that Jerry Jones just pulled this off? He went into this past draft with 1 first-round pick way down at number 27, and he wound up landing a top 10 potential pick in Randy Gregory, and he got him all the way down at the bottom of the 2nd round.
I couldn't be in a greater situation. I couldn't be in a greater place. And, I just want to thank Mr. Jones, his family, this organization, and everybody that's standing behind me, because I guarantee you this. I'm going to give this organization everything that I have and more. This is going to be the best offensive line in NFL history. Mark my words.
Wow, powerful words there.